Hi everyone, it's Dr. Tom O'Brien, and let me get my adjustments here and make sure that I've got to look over here, so I'm looking at you and not looking at me on the phone. Well, hello. I think we're starting a couple minutes late, and that's because I was on an interview with a really great group of doctors. They have a think tank, and there's over 100 of them, and their emphasis is on the microbiome. That's the good bacteria in the gut. And they invite guests to come and speak to them, and so we just did an hour, and they just had so many questions, we kept going. So I'm sorry to start a few minutes late, but here we are. And I really think it's great to see groups like this stemming up all over the world, actually, as doctors are learning more and more. Technology is great. I really love that we can do all this. And I'm still on my honeymoon in Costa Rica, so I love technology. I'm just really happy for all of this and the opportunity to talk to you. So thank you. And there's a couple of comments here. Oh, that's really nice. Thank you so much. And it's nice to be here. Thank you, Kathy. So today is about the top 10 foods not to eat. And there are, of course, many foods not to eat, but the ones that really seem to trigger responses for most people. There are some that are nasty, but not many people eat them, or not that many. So I'm going to go with the big kahunas, and just to help us think in the right direction, right? So the first one is margarine and margarine oils. Lots of people are still using margarine in this world today. And look, here's an example. 40% of your brain cells, 40% of the wall around the brain cell is made up of fats. And those fats are the omega-3s, the good fats that come from fish oils. So what does all that mean? I'm going to date myself, but when we would go to the doctor's office years ago, you go in the bathroom to give a urine sample, and you put the urine cup on this little Lazy Susan on the wall, and then it swings around to the other room, and the nurse is over there and would take the cup to run the tests and all that, right? Remember that? Some of you do. Your brain cells operate like Lazy Susans. And one brain cell makes a chemical that then goes through the wall to the next brain cell, like a Lazy Susan. And then that next brain cell takes that chemical, maybe tweaks it a little bit, adds something to it. It goes to the next one, and to the next one, and to the next one. That's how our brain communicates. That's how cells communicate in the brain. So if you have brain cells, when you make new cells, we have a whole new body every 7 years. Some cells reproduce very quickly. You've heard me say the inside lining of the gut, every 3 to 5 days, you have a whole new lining to your gut. Some cells are very slow, like bone cells are slow. But we make new cells every day. And what do you make new cells out of? You make new cells out of whatever it is that's on the end of your fork, right? So if your brain needs fats to make brain cells, and the only fats in your diet, or the majority of the fats in your diet, are French fries and onion rings and margarine, then your brain cells are made out of the fats from French fries and onion rings and margarine. Well, what's the result of that? Your Lazy Susans get rusty. And when they get rusty, they don't communicate very well cell to cell. There's a fluidity to fats. Some fats are really thick and mucousy. Remember Rosanna Dana? Some fats are just like that, and they don't allow communication very well from one to the other. And other fats, like the omega-3s, are very easy to communicate cell to cell and encourage cell to cell communication. That's why, when you look at the studies, children whose mothers took fish oils during pregnancy, those children, their IQs at age 5 to 8 is higher than the same groups of children with the same socioeconomic backgrounds and things whose mothers did not eat cold water fish during pregnancy or take omega-3 fatty acids during pregnancy. So the IQs are higher of the kids because their brains communicate better. Their brains are able to cell, the Lazy Susans work better. Fats control the Lazy Susans in your brain. So eat bad fats, just know the price you're going to pay. How many of you think you're getting old because, I don't remember the way I used to. I don't remember people's names the way I used to. Oh, really? How old are you? I'm 42. No, that's not supposed to happen. There's something not working right. And you can say, your lazy Susans are rusty. Well, studies show that when you take fish oils as an adult, when you take fish oils, eventually you push out the bad fats and replace them with the good fats, and your IQ goes up. Your memory comes back. You don't lose your keys anymore. Where did I put my keys? That just doesn't happen anymore. So the first one is fats. The better options, pure, cold-pressed, extra virgin coconut oil. I think coconut oil is, I'll say the cat's meow right now, because coconut oil, the studies are really clear. When you get organic, extra virgin coconut oil, the really good stuff, it enhances IQs. There's a lower incidence of Alzheimer's in patients that have had coconut oil in their diets for years. There are many different studies that show brain function is better when you have a little bit of coconut oil in your diet. Extra virgin olive oil, same thing, same kind of studies that show as a component of the Mediterranean diet that it helps brains to function better. So extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, avocados, nuts, the fats in nuts. So here's what you do with nuts. And there are many studies on reducing cardiovascular disease with eating nuts. Why? It's the fats in the nuts that have a major contribution in reducing your risk of heart attacks and strokes. So how do you do nuts? What nuts do you do? I've recommended this for years. You buy organic nuts. You buy a pound of each of these. You get Brazil nuts, walnuts, hazelnuts, roasted peanuts, almonds, a pound of each organic. Put them in a big bag or a couple big Ziploc bags, mix them all up together, throw them in the freezer. And you take a bowl and just put some in a bowl, leave them on your kitchen counter. Every day you take one handful of that mix of nuts, just one handful. You're going to lower cholesterol. You're going to increase the good cholesterol, the HDLs. You're going to reduce triglycerides. You're going to stabilize blood sugar. Your brain's going to work a little better by having a handful of nuts every day. What nuts? The mixture that I just gave you. Well, I read that Brazil nuts are better than hazelnuts. Well, okay, then have more Brazil nuts if you want. But there are studies that show that hazelnuts are good too, right? So we don't need the best. We want a combination. The term is all roads lead to Rome. It technically is called a pleiotropic approach to your health. What is pleiotropic? It means many ways. So you take many ingredients to turn on different genes to get the effect you want. In this discussion here right now is reduce cardiovascular risk, okay? So on the fats. Number 2, table salt. Don't use up what you've got, throw it away. Just throw it away. Get some sea salt, get some Himalayan sea salt. We have a collection of sea salts at home. It's kind of fun, sometimes we'll have a steak. I have a steak about once every 10 days to 2 weeks, something like that. I don't know how often. There's no schedule to it. But I'll try different salts. I'll do a gray salt once in a while. We get salt and we give them these little containers. You can twist cap them. There's that store. Honey, what's the name of that store in Chicago? That's a whole block. It's an Italian store. I don't know today. I forget. But, it's in New York. But anyway, you just get some different sea salts, and you can get to the different flavors. Pink Himalayan sea salt's a very popular one. Lots of people like it. Great for you. Do not use up the old Morton's. Throw it away. It's not good for you. It's got dextrose. They stabilize. They bleach it. There's bleach residue in there. It's extremely processed. It goes up to 1,200 degrees when they're processing that salt. They take the natural iodine out, which we need a little bit of iodine, and they replace it with potassium bromide, potassium iodine. And I can't say that that's toxic for you, but there's nothing as good for your thyroid function, for example, as iodine. Just normal iodine. There's a little bit in sea salt. You don't want to take extra iodine if you don't need it. How do you know if you need it? You got to test to see if you need more iodine. But in terms of what you get in sea salt, it's perfectly safe. It's micro dosages. So sea salt is going to give you more of the, I'm so sorry. I didn't block the microphone. Sea salt will give you more of what you need. All right, so that was number 2 is salt. Number 3, fruit juice and sodas. How many of you have gone on a hike, and let's say you're in the mountains or in a valley where the mountains are coming down. How many of you have seen streams or rivers coming down from the mountains of orange juice? You think? You know, if you drink an 8-ounce glass of orange juice, that's like 3 oranges, 4 oranges. Can you eat 3 or 4 oranges at one time? The amount of juice that we take in, even 100% organic, fresh pressed juices, it's really hard on your blood sugar regulating system. Nothing wrong with a glass of orange juice once in a while. But when you put on top of that all the carbohydrates that we're eating during the day, the years of eating wrong foods that you've now stabilized a bit, but now because of that your insulin resistance is off, you know, your blood sugar's not quite as stable as it could be because you got beat up over the years with Coca-Cola and Mountain Dew. You don't do that anymore, but there's, you know, you pay a price for how you've lived your life up to this point. So with our kids, the studies show that when you reduce the amount of fruit juice that kids drink in school, first, when you transition them from soda pop to fruit juice, their attention goes up, their grades get better. And when you transition them from fruit juice to watered down fruit juice, they do better again because it's less sugar. So you want to move away from having concentrated sugars. And the juices are such a common place that we've all grown up with, drinking pop. And I grew up on Mountain Dew. Not proud of it, but that's what happened. I think that's why my brain works the way it does now. But the juices, even the 100% pure pressed juices, they tax your blood sugar level. It's more sugar than your body's designed to take in at one time. Eat an orange instead. Eat an apple. You know, this whole thing about an apple a day keeps the doctor away. There's a reason for that, and we'll talk more about that. I've done one thing on apples already, and you know, but we'll do more on that later. Also, fruit juice is high in fructose. There's nothing wrong with the fructose in fruit. There's a whole lot of problems with the fructose that's concentrated in different foods and beverages that we take in. That taxes your blood sugar, it taxes your insulin, which sets us up for diabetes. You want to avoid fructose. If I'm going to have a sweet, I really don't have sweets very often. I don't know you know, I have a gluten-free blueberry muffin once in a while. But if I'm looking for sweet for some reason, like in my coffee I put a little sweet, I put sugar. I'm not going to use fructose. You know, I just put regular sugar in there. I don't advocate you do that, but I'm not perfect. And I don't know, I can't advocate that you be perfect, but I stay away from fructose like this. So avoid it like the plague. Number 4 on this list, microwaved foods, including popcorn. Why? Well, the only thing we use a microwave for in our home is we put the sponges from the kitchen sink in there. And I turn it on 2 minutes and walk away. Do not stand near a microwave when it's on. The radiation, you do not want to be around it. And the only thing we do is sponges. Why? Because it kills anything. Microwave kills it. And so we sterilize the sponges that way, right? So when you cook your food in a microwave, you kill everything. Now, we think hygienically, well, that's a good thing. There's no bacteria. Well, there's something to be said for, you know, antibacterial cooking, making sure that you're not getting contaminated food. There's value to that concept, but you can do it in other ways. You can steam vegetables as opposed to nuking them. We call it nuking them because that's what you're doing. You're nuking them. So get the microwave. Don't use a microwave for your food. There's no life force in the food. One of the tests that we do for patients, I used to do it a lot, it's called bioelectrical impedance, and you measure the amount of water inside a cell, the amount of water outside a cell, and you measure something called a phase angle. The phase angle is the life force in that body. Children at birth are somewhere around 10, their phase angle. When we're close to death at the end of life, we're somewhere around 4. People who are really healthy that come in to see me, they're somewhere usually about 7. It's, oh, your phase angle is 7.1. That's pretty good. 2 people that I've ever heard of, there are probably more, but I've only heard of 2 that had phase angles over 11. One of them was Evander Holyfield, a boxer who was just super shape guy, just incredible shape. And the other was Lance Armstrong. Now, whether or not he used performance-enhancing drugs, I don't know. But his phase angle is 11.4. Genetically, that guy was built to have strength and vitality and life force. So phase angle measures life force. And when you pluck a vegetable out of the garden and you measure its phase angle, it's in the 40s, somewhere in the 40s. When you microwave a vegetable, its phase angle is 0. You killed it. There's no enzymes. There's no life force left in it. That's why it's a strong argument of the raw food movement. People say raw food for the enzymes. Well, you know, I think that's a pretty good argument, and I think that we should have more of our food raw or lightly steamed. I don't think having everything raw is a good idea when you've been eating cooked food for a lifetime. Now you're going to switch over to raw food. Your digestive system can't do that very easily. You need to transition over 6 months to a year to a 100% raw food diet. I think that's safer. That's my own clinical experience. But having more raw food in general in our diet, for most of us, would be a good thing. So nuke the microwave, and the only thing you're going to nuke in there is going to be sponges, and don't put food in there, all right? Number 5, farm-raised salmon, Atlantic salmon, and farm-raised fish like tilapia. There are so many reasons why the farm-raised fish, you know, I was just reading a study yesterday that the cages for farm-raised fish, the cages to prevent bacteria from growing on the cage so that water can go through is a paint, some kind of a substance that's high in zinc and high in copper. So a lot of these fish are toxic with high levels of copper. You'd never know to look for that. Now, copper's not a bad thing unless you get too much of it. It's supposed to be in balance in our bodies, but copper toxicity is a problem with farm-raised fish. Farm-raised fish are so anemic. The salmon are so anemic, they inject each one of those fish with a dye when they harvest them so it looks like salmon. Because if you were to see that fish without being injected with the dye, it doesn't look like salmon. You know, so, and the amount of pesticides in farm-raised fish is really high. So the amount of toxic chemicals in farm-raised fish is high. I know, you know, we've heard fish is good for us. Well, it is. It was good for us, and it's supposed to be good for us. But unfortunately, you know, the politics of industrial farming have come into play now. And so lots of these farm-raised fish that we're eating are more toxic than we would want them to be. Let me just take a look here. University of New York at Albany. I made a few notes. I'm going to look at my notes once in a while because I can't remember all this stuff. University of New York at Albany, researchers found dioxin levels in farm-raised salmon to be 11 times higher than those in wild salmon. 11 times higher. And this environmental pollutants linked to cancer, organ damage, immune system dysfunction. You've already heard me talk about we don't have time to mess around anymore, you know. The World Wildlife Fund published a study about 5 months ago that said there has been on average a 57% loss of all mammal wildlife on the planet since between 1970 and 2012. 57% loss of everything that lives on the planet, all the mammals on the planet. And it's because of the toxic chemicals that we're so exposed to all day, every day. That's why we're going to talk more about plastics, and how you transition away from so much plastic. I stood in the kitchen here, this house that we're renting this morning, and I looked at how many things had plastic in them just on the kitchen counter. 17 different things were made of or had plastic in them. 17, from the saran wrap to there's an ice maker, it's made out of plastic. You know, the water bottle is a plastic water bottle. I mean, all these different, and this plastic leaches into the food or the beverages. So in terms of farm-raised salmon, it's just more exposure to these toxic chemicals that have damage potential in our bodies. And it's not just if you eat a piece of farm-raised salmon that's going to do it to you, but it's another piece of too much toxicity. At some point, you cross the line. When you cross the line, the least little bit that you get has a profound damaging impact. So that's why we're going to talk in the future more about detoxing, why it's so important to detox regularly. And I don't mean fasting, but how to have some detox concepts in your world. So we'll be talking about that. My honey is telling me to, oh, look at all the questions that are here. So I'm looking at another computer here there's me, and there's a bunch of questions. So Claudette Bruno Lins, thank you for all you do, Dr. O'Brien. Bought your Autoimmune Fix book and have watched all your videos. Oh, thank you. Has helped me greatly. I love how compassionate you are about helping people. You're a good man. Thank you. That feels really good. Thank you, Claudette. Back to my notes about farm-raised salmon, or else I won't be able to finish this. I'm told that I have to, I got to do this at some point because I just keep talking. A 2011 study published in a medical journal called PLOS ONE found mice eating farm-raised salmon actually showed weight gain and an increased risk of metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes symptoms. Metabolic syndrome sets you up for diabetes. The risk comes from the persistent organic pollutants that tend to be high in the farm salmon. That's exactly right. We've known for many, many years about these toxic chemicals are called persistent organic pollutants, DDT, PCBs, that accumulate in the food chain. And there's a liver enzyme called GGTP. If that is in the higher quarter of normal, so there's a normal range. Let's say the normal range is 1 to 100. It's not. Depends on the lab. But if it's 1 to 100, if you're in the 75 to 100, the upper quarter of normal, you've got high levels of persistent organic pollutants and your liver's acting up trying to protect you. So that's just a little pearl for you. Next time you get a blood test, look for the GGTP. Some labs call it GGT, but it's GGTP. And if you're in the higher quarter of normal, first you'll say, oh, look, it's fine. You're in the normal reference range. Well, wait. Am I in the higher quarter of the normal reference range? That means that I'm vulnerable to metabolic syndrome and developing type 2 diabetes. So for the docs out there, that's a little pearl. It takes about 2.5 to 4 pounds of other fish to create the salmon chow needed to produce 1 pound of farm-raised salmon. Well, how do you like that in terms of being a nasty statistic? So they make these pellets, to feed the salmon, and 2.5 to 4 pounds of other fish, grind it all up, make pellets out of it, throw it in the water to feed the salmon, to make 1 pound of salmon. In November 2015, the Food and Drug Administration approved the sale of genetically engineered salmon and will not require any labeling. How's that for politics? They don't have to tell you that it's GMO. It was approved despite findings that GMO salmon doesn't actually grow as fast as its creator claims. So they lied about it. I shouldn't say that online, but better options, yeah, I know. Better options, Alaskan wild-caught salmon. By the way, Vital Choice. Vital Choice is where we buy our fish, and I recommend you buy your fish. It's online, vitalchoice.com. You'll see them there. My friend Randy Hartnell owns it. Wonderful man. Randy was a salmon fisherman for over 20 years. And he realized that, we have to get this word out to people, to the world about this. So he pulled together, I don't know how many, salmon fishermen in the area. They formed a collective. And Vital Choice sells the fish that they catch. And you can be sure that they're meticulous on making sure that it's the best fish. So vitalchoicesalmon.com. Randy, you're welcome, for the plug. Support the guy. Let's hope we can make him very, very successful. It's a nice company. Their catalogs are beautiful. And you say, oh, my God, that fish is so much more expensive. It's going to be a little bit more expensive. Well, yeah. So what you feed your family can be, I'm not quite sure how to say it. It's worth the money. It's just worth the money. It's when you get a piece of their salmon, and you go to the store, local store, and buy a piece of that salmon, make both of them that night for dinner. Try that yourself. Make them for dinner at the same time, not the next night. Compare them side by side. Cook them in the same broiler oven or in the same frying pan, however you do it. Same recipe, everything's the same. Try the Vital Choice seafood and let me know if you don't do an OMG. There's such a difference here. Oh my God. So when you taste them side by side, that's an interesting test. I hope I'm going to, I've never thought to do that myself. I've never done it, but when I've tasted the stuff that not restaurants, hotels serve, because I travel a lot, and so, man, I really, it's better than none though. And then I taste ours at home, I just, oh, thank you, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. So that's Vital Choice. Number 6, factory farm meats. A 2012 study looking at feather testing detected banned antibiotics, allergy medications, painkillers, and even depressive medications like Prozac in chickens. In chickens! They're pumping them full of chemicals. Feeding poultry arsenic has resulted in higher levels of toxic arsenic in humans. Some of the feed they give to poultry is high in arsenic. 30 million pounds of antibiotics are sold for use in farm animals annually. It's one of the highest sources of antibiotic use in our country is they give it to the animals, then we eat the meat of those animals. Better option, my recommendation, you always purchase meat from a trusted local source. Look, you know, the best thing that you could do is go to the local farmer's market when you can and just ask around, say, hey, who's a rancher that's got really good grass-fed meats? And, you know, you'll have to explore a little bit. It might take you a few months to find it, but you'll find somebody. What we do where we live, and I'm told this is done now in many parts of the country, is that you form a little collective. Like you give a farmer X number of dollars for the year. I think we do $500 for the year, and then something like that. And then every week we get a box of vegetables all year round when they're harvesting, whatever they're harvesting. And it's great. You never know what you're going to get, but it's always fresh and it's really good. So you're getting a variety of foods, which I encourage as a primary recommendation to get a variety of different foods. So see about those collectives. I don't remember what they're called. But go to farmers markets, ask around. You'll find a source for healthier chickens, healthier eggs, things like that. Number 7, artificial sweeteners. Being artificial, you'd think fake sweeteners would be used cautiously by people, but no, we just, okay, I'll have the artificial sweetener. I'll have the sugar-free Coca-Cola, as if that's better. No, have the sugar. If you're going to have something, have the sugar. One of the most startling things I learned about the artificial sweeteners is that they alter the microbiome, the good bacteria in your gut. So these artificial sweeteners that are supposed to be low calorie, 0 calorie, what they encourage is the growth of the bacteria that hoard calories. They're called the Firmicutes family of bacteria. And the artificial sweeteners increase the bacteria in your gut that hoard calories. So your ratio is off between, it's called the Bacteroides and the Firmicutes. And you develop the bacteria, the concentrations of calorie hoarding bacteria, like, for example, the Pima Indians. The Pima Indians spent hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of years in the southwest U.S. Nothing grows there. Cactus. So they didn't grow crops. So how did they survive? Well, they had to be really good at using calories. So whatever they found to eat, the roots or the animal, whatever they found to eat, their body had to be really efficient in hoarding and using those calories. If they weren't efficient, they died and they didn't reproduce. So those that reproduced were those whose mothers were really efficient at using calories, because mother passes the microbiome on to the baby. And it turns out they were very high in Firmicutes. When you use artificial sweeteners, you raise your Firmicutes level. What's the result of that? Well, now the Pima Indians of today, they have this genetic bacteria in their gut. The concentrations in their gut are from their ancestors. 50% of Pima Indians are obese and have type 2 diabetes by the age of 35. 50% of them. Why? It's not that they're eating so much more garbage than everybody else. It's because of the microbiome, that whatever they eat, their microbiome hoards it more. That's calorie hoarding. That's what the artificial sweeteners do in your body. Every time, so you're trying to lose weight, you're doing artificial sweeteners and you can't lose weight? So once you read the studies, the comment is, you think? Yep. And you're not supposed to read the science, but your doctors are supposed to read the science for you. Denise Kelly asks, what are your thoughts on stevia? Stevia is not better, Denise. It has a hit on insulin, and it impacts on, it's called insulin resistance, meaning how well your body can use insulin. Do you know that the vast majority of diabetics in our world today do not need insulin? It's that their bodies can't use the insulin that they're making. It's called insulin resistance. So the drugs for diabetes, the most common drugs, are called glucophage and metformin. Those drugs help to push the sugar into your cells. Why? Because insulin's not working to carry the sugar into your cells. So stevia will increase insulin resistance. I don't say this lightly. I think the best thing to use would be a little honey if you need a sweetener. Locally produced honey is always best because then you reduce your vulnerability to allergies or from pollen in the environment, because the honey kind of almost homeopathically doses you for protection. But honey would be the best. I just don't like the taste of honey. So if I'm going to use a sweetener, I use regular sugar. I'm not advocating it, but, mea culpa, I'm not perfect. Sabrina, what about xylitol? Can't speak to xylitol other than I know that it does increase firmicutes. I don't know any more about it than that, but it does. So all of these sweeteners, it's the impact on the microbiome that's most critical. And so if you're not sure, just type in xylitol and microbiome. See what comes up on Google, and you go, oh my God. And a source, I think a credible source for inflammation, a credible source on information for things like this, go to Mercola's site, Mercola.com. He's got a whole team that does research on this, and his write-ups are usually really good, and they're right on the money. So you can go there. Number 7, processed foods containing artificial food colorings and dyes. Oh, it was Dr. Benjamin Feingold back in the 80s. He was an allergist, and I think his specialty was allergist, but what he noticed was that it was the artificial colorings and dyes that were affecting kids' brains so much, and attention deficit. There weren't that many autistic kids back then, but a lot of attention deficit. And all of his peers thought he was a nutcase because he was talking about this. Turns out he was right on the money. The science is really clear about this stuff. It affects your brain dramatically. These toxic chemicals affect the brain dramatically. Processed meats. This is really hard for me because I love soppressata salami. I'm half Italian. I really like the taste, and I will do soppressata salami maybe once every month or two if I can find a good one, right? I will. And I don't recommend it, but I do. But if I have soppressata salami for 3 days, I get body odor, and the deodorants don't work anymore. It just doesn't work. The body odor, and where's the body odor coming from? It's coming from the microbiome. You change your microbiome in 1 day, depending on what you eat. There's minor changes in 1 day. So you throw something in there like lunch meats with the preservatives that are in lunch meats, and it changes the microbiome. In my case, it shows up, and I think I smell like an old Italian within 3 days of eating soppressata. So I just tell my wife ahead of time, honey, I'm going to have some soppressata today. But then she makes sure I don't have it for more than 1 day. We're okay. Nitrites can be converted into nitrosamines. Nitrites are in most processed meats. My son, when he was growing up, he was like 8, 10 years old, a treat for him was to ride his bicycle up to the corner. There was a Subway, and he'd get a tuna fish sandwich or some lunch meat sandwich. That was a treat if he did something really good. Well, I didn't really like that, but back then we were not completely gluten-free. This was 25 years ago. And so he'd get his little sub sandwich. You know, he worked hard in school. Way to go, Jace. High five. All right, you go, man. But wait, come here. And I would give him 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C. And he'd have to take 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C before he went to the Subway. Why? Because vitamin C inhibits the conversion of nitrites into nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are the toxic chemicals that are associated with stomach cancers, GI cancers. They're potent chemicals, potent cancer-causing chemicals. So with my son, I read a study somewhere about it, and so I felt better about him having his treat, you know, that he couldn't go unless, Dad, I don't want to drink that, you know, but all right, forget it, man, no Subway. So then he'd take it, and then he'd go off and he'd have his Subway sandwich. So stay away from lunch meats. If you're going to have lunch meats, take, if you're an adult, I would take 3,000 to 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C, very safe for you, and not just ascorbic acid, but a full vitamin C complex. The one that I use is called Vitality C, and is it on our website? It's on our website, so you can get it there if you want it. Let's see, number 10 of the Dirty Dozen. Yeah, the 10th of the 10 foods to avoid is the Dirty Dozen. The Environmental Working Group came up with the Dirty Dozen a few years ago. Why these dozen foods to avoid? If they're not organic, you avoid them. If they're organic, great, they're great for you. But if they're not organic, they have the highest concentrations of pesticides and insecticides of all foods. So they're called the Dirty Dozen. And what are they? Sorry, I know, but strawberries, spinach, nectarines, apples, peaches, pears, cherries, grapes, celery, tomatoes, sweet bell peppers, and potatoes. And yes, I know that's most of the vegetables you eat. I know, me too. But, you know, the vegetable's good for you. The nutrients are good for you. Throw a lot of toxic chemicals on them, they're not good for you anymore. They still have some benefits, and they're better than no vegetables. So if that's all you've got available, like when I travel so much and I'm going to a hotel, I'm going to have a nice big salad. But it's, you know, it's got celery in there, and it's got tomatoes and stuff, but it's better than not having any vegetables. But when you have a choice, you always do organic, because once again, it's the overload, the pleiotropic, you know, all roads lead to Rome, all of the different toxins we're exposed to. The primary toxin for most of us is the food that we eat. The primary family of toxins we're exposed to is in the food we eat. So avoid the Dirty Dozen whenever you can, and go with the Clean 15, also from the Environmental Working Group. This is in their 2017 Shopper's Guide to Pesticides in Produce. So go to EWG.org, Environmental Working Group, and you can see their list. They explain this stuff. They do a great job of explaining it. Sweet corn. This is a Clean 15. Sweet corn, avocados, pineapples, cabbage, onion, sweet peas that are frozen, papayas, asparagus, mangoes, eggplant, honeydew melon, kiwi, cantaloupe, cauliflower, and grapefruit. Those are the ones, if they're not organic, they're safer for you. Always best to go organic, but I'll do those again. Sweet corn, avocados, pineapples, cabbage, onions, frozen sweet peas, papayas, asparagus, mangoes, eggplant, honeydew melon, kiwi, cantaloupe, cauliflower, grapefruit. Now someone's going to say, but wait, aren't papayas commonly GMO? Yes, they are. You know, I know we're trying to find a way to work with all this stuff. You know, the world's so toxic now, we're killing off everything. So you have to have an approach that says, all right, I'm going to minimize wherever I can. Some places I can't. I'm going to have my sopressata, or I'm going to put a half a spoon of sugar in my coffee when I have coffee. You know, whatever your thing is, just minimize. And wherever you can, clean it up. Do we have any other questions? That I know Marzi's answering questions here that people are going through. Let me see. Mariela Gastaldi, Sabrina Avalon. It's in Spanish. I'm sorry, Mariela. I don't read Spanish, so I can't help you with that one. Mike and Janet McManus, eat organic. Amen. Way to go, man. Ellie Ferns. I get to my vitamin C tolerance in about 1,000 milligrams or less, and hints on how to take it. probably I would take a couple hundred milligrams then every few hours. Just titrate. Take less, more frequently. If your threshold is 1,000 milligrams, I would change the type of vitamin C you're taking because that's pretty low for a threshold. It shouldn't be that way. You may be having a reaction to the type of vitamin C. But if you find that's true with a number of different types, just titrate, take less, more often. Let's see. Laura Aikman, best doctor. I definitely look up to you. Thank you for treating my family and myself for most of my childhood. Oh, thank you, Laura. That's really nice. Thank you. So listen, guys, you all have to pay it forward. In your own way. You got to do nice things for the world, right? Buy my book. I want my book to be a New York Times bestseller. I'm startled that it's not yet. It came out in September. Please buy my book. You'll learn so much. It's called The Autoimmune Fix. You can get it on my website. Tell your friends. Give it as gifts. Give it as a birthday gift. And people think you're kind of nuts, but maybe they'll read it and say, you know what? If you read a chapter, let's have a discussion about the chapter. Start a discussion group. You get a discussion group going. Send me questions. I'll answer your questions. But we all have to pay it forward, in our own ways. Pay the toll for the car behind you in the toll booth. Share a little information with somebody. Whatever it takes to make this world a better place, huh? Okay, Marzi wants me to answer another question or two. Okay. Magdalena Calabresi. What a nice name, Magdalena Calabresi. How many servings of animal protein per day would you recommend? Would you be able to recommend a school to learn an art of functional diagnosis? I'm currently a student of IFMCA looking to continue education. Okay, how many servings of protein a day? Clinically, what I've noticed for me personally and what I usually recommend to people, it depends on what stage of life you're in. Are you growing? Do you need more protein to build more? Children need protein a whole lot more than middle-aged adults do. Middle-aged adults need some protein. So how many times a day? It depends on what your digestive system can do. I don't mean to be evasive, but I do protein, I think, with every meal. And usually I recommend protein with every meal, but it's the portions of protein, how much protein. It depends. If you're exercising really hard, you need more protein to build more muscle. And if you're not exercising, if you're a couch potato, get off the couch and stop eating white potatoes. They're not good for you anyway. White potatoes activate genes of inflammation, 72 different genes of inflammation when you eat white potatoes. Sweet potatoes are great, yams are great, white potatoes, and if you are going to eat white potatoes, go for ones that are lower on the glycemic index. What are those? Just type in glycemic index of potatoes on Google so that you can see the whole list of which ones to do. Let's see. Ronnie Moore. I followed the reversing the autoimmune diet for 1 year. My psoriasis is gone. Hey, high five. Way to go. Way to go. Do I need to stay on? Oh, that's a really good question. Can I go back to eating the junk? No. What's the matter with you? No, you don't. You likely don't have to stay on the autoimmune diet. You don't have to be that strict. Just when there's more to your question before I answer. I'm now gaining weight more than I want and not sure why. Just added a few things back in, like eggs, some potatoes, protein shakes, a little cheese, no wheat or grains. Well, way to go in reversing your psoriasis. That's the first thing. So the question is, why is this happening? Why am I gaining weight? From what I've said already here today, the likely trigger, culprit to the weight gain is your microbiome. So what do? Test. You have to do a test for your microbiome. You go to my website, learn about tests, but you have to test to see what is my microbiome right now, and then you find out where it's out of balance, if it is, and then, okay, how do I change it? You find out how to change it. So I want to acknowledge you for the reversing your psoriasis, and that you're on the diet, but you've added a few things back and you're gaining weight. And what I said about potatoes just now, 72 genes for inflammation with white potatoes, that may be contributing to inflammation, puts weight gain on. But likely you're feeding the microbiome in a way that's not ideal for you. You have to figure that out. All right, these are supposed to be 15 minutes, and I know that we're much more than 15 minutes. Let me know if you guys like this, and what the ideal length of time is for you, because I can, go on. You give me questions. I love talking and sharing the information. So, and so if it's taxing, if the amount of time is taxing, please let me know what the ideal time is. I really want to make it work for you. Thanks so very much. See you next week. Bye-bye.